Cat and I'm back because what once was will be again. I got my thinking cap on, and this time we are going to use the concept of scientific research to think about who is Jon Snow and Daenerys and how we're going to get to their parentage. Because there are a lot of theories out there, and quite frankly, I saw a leak saying that in one of our episodes we are going to see the image of Ned Stark, young Ned Stark, in the tower with Lyanna while she's whispering, "Promise me," and there's going to be a baby. And the crowd goes wild. Shh. Look, I told you it's Lyanna Stark. And then they'll go crazy. Yay, see, I told you it's Rhaegar plus Lyanna equals Jon Snow. No. No. Nope. So, before I get started, I want you to think about this concept about how you do research. Number one, if you're trying to build a nuclear reactor with hot fusion, well, that's established science. So, of course, you would pull out all the research that had already been before that had a successful outcome of nuclear fusion, and you would follow that along as you were building your own and make sure you had the same outcomes along certain points to ensure that at the end, boom, you had nuclear fusion. But what about cold fusion? Nobody has successfully, to date, created cold fusion. There's a lot of theories out there about how it's done, and there's been plenty of research and scientific processes developed that came to zero, nada, none. So if you were going to try to do your own cold fusion experiment, you would not get out other people's research and follow their process, because you would come out with the same damn result, which is unsuccessful. No cold fusion. So, as far as I'm concerned, we have not developed cold fusion. Jon Snow. And just because everybody else in the crowd insists that it's Rhaegar plus Lyanna equals Jon Snow, and that, in fact, something in the book just seems to go, look, he kidnapped her, he took her to the Tower of Joy. A little bit later, there's a baby. He dies with her name on his lips. Yeah, well, there's this problem. Because we're starting at the wrong point. You're starting at the wrong point to develop your concepts and research. Numero uno problema. The constant in our story is not that freaking Rhaegar Targaryen kidnapped Lyanna Stark. The constant in the story is the title of the whole damn series in the first place. A Song of Ice and Fire. And that is why I put this little video out that only about 2 people looked at, and they were like, yeah, so I know what it is. It was a reminder that the real war, the overarching story in the background of this entire thing, is not this petty squabble about who's going to sit on the throne, or whether Jon and Daenerys is going to get together, or who their parents are, or if they're going to go north and fight the others. No. It is a Song of Ice and Fire. And the entire point of this story is that, in fact, there is some sort of conflict, or there has always been a conflict or struggle between these two yin and yang concepts, the ice and the fire. And that some time ago, there was this war. And that the war came to an end, and there had to be some sort of compromise that was met. And in that video, I said that the compromise was sealed, or the compact was sealed with a marriage between ice and fire, and there was a balance. And now, the reason it is beginning again is because it is unbalanced. The world of ice and fire is unbalanced. It must be balanced again. If it's going to end with a compromise compact where ice and fire get together to create that balance, a Song of Ice and Fire, then one person must be ice and the other person must be fire. So, starting from that constant, let's look at our contestants. Our first contestant is Daenerys, maybe Targaryen, who, at least by her looks and her eyeballs, and the fact that she has freaking dragons, obviously are Valyrian bloodlines running through her veins. In fact, we know all about how the Targaryens themselves had tried to maintain this purified blood, Valyrian blood, to ensure that they had the dragon blood, Dragon Lord blood. And the Valyrians were living in the lands of the long summer, where there were 14 volcanoes. And yeah, Daenerys has freaking dragons. She's all about the fire. Okay? Her bloodlines are pure fire. She don't have a bloodline of, Ned Stark running through her veins. She has Valyrian blood. And it might not be completely Targaryen. It might be some other folks. But we'll get to that. But look at her. She's fire. So, Jon Snow. If Daenerys is fire and she has the Valyrian bloodline, how is Rhaegar Targaryen? Obviously also of the Valyrian bloodline with fire, plus Lyanna, who maybe could represent ice, equals Jon Snow ice. Fire plus ice is not ice. Because at the end of this arc, there has to be the balance between ice and fire. And entertaining the idea that Rhaegar Targaryen is Jon Snow's father, then Jon Snow is half ice and half fire. And if he marries Daenerys, or gets with Daenerys, the total fire, then it's totally out of balance, right? It's like 1/4 ice and 3/4 fire. Is there actually a compromise? No. And besides that, he has to represent the world of ice, the land beyond the walls. Yes, folks. In fact, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to be completely shocked, I think, about what the upcoming battle actually looks like. Because all of these people read too many comic books with the superhero who, is going to join up with Daenerys and her fiery freaking dragons and drive the others back and be like that hero. It's a song of ice and fire. What is ice going to be doing with fucking fire? Driving the others back. People, think about that. Okay, so Jon Snow must have ice in his veins. Is Lyanna Stark enough ice to represent that Jon Snow is ice? Well, going by that theory, let's go with the Starks can somehow be ice. Why is it Lyanna, then, who is extra special out of all of the Stark children, to be ice? Or to be the representative of ice? At least by herself, with Rhaegar Targaryen. If the Valyrians kept their bloodlines as, we're going to marry into Valyrians and we're going to have Valyrian fire blood, then it must stand true that the ice must also come from ice. So let's talk about how there might be ice involved. We'll talk about the Starks having ice in their veins, first of all. Because Ned Stark would sleep nude in the cold of Winterfell. It didn't affect him whatsoever. And we saw Jon Snow above the wall walking around, and she was like, I can't believe you didn't freeze to death. Ygritte says that to him. And he goes, well, my father said I was, of the north, that, the cold was all about me. And she's like, whatever, man, you're from below the wall. That's south. He goes, no, my dad said I'm from the north. She said, well, who's your dad? And he goes, Ned Stark. And then she goes, oh, Ned Stark. So did your dad ever tell you how we are, how you guys have wildling blood? You ever hear the story of Belle the Bard? He's like, who? And she says, you know nothing, Jon Snow. And neither apparently does anybody else who keeps insisting that Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna equals freaking Jon Snow. And believe me, if you suggest any other theory out there, there are one or two theories that have been addressed, but they are nowhere near where they need to be. Nowhere near. Except for one that I thought was going down the right path, and then they went whoop, totally sideways. Because after that, the next thing that happens is if anybody mentions another theory about who his father could be, everybody who is like, Team Rhaegar and Lyanna were in love equals Jon Snow, and then it ended with his tragic death, will jump on there and be like, you suck! You don't know what you're talking about, and you need to read the books. Because it says that Rhaegar kidnapped Lyanna. It says that's what everybody thinks. Or some. And other people think they were in love. But what we know is, we don't know what the fuck Lyanna and Rhaegar were doing. Because they're dead. Ned never said, and he's dead. And the only other dude who might actually know what the deal was, Alan Reed, you have never seen him. Where is he? Nowhere to be found. And the only people who actually maybe said something about anything in particular were his children with Bran on the way up to the wall. Didn't your dad ever tell you about what happened? No, he didn't. And he's dead. So, let's review this concept, because in the next half, we're going to talk about how ice in the veins might be coming about. So, the constant, we have to have a constant to start from. The constant is a song of ice and fire. It is not a song of lukewarm water and fire. It is not a song of half fire, half ice, and some fire. It is a song of ice and fire. And there must be a balance. Jon Snow cannot be Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark's child, because he would not be ice. And if Daenerys is fire, and she has the bloodline of the Valyrians and or the people from the land of the long summer, and she is fire, then Jon Snow has to have ice in the same concept, in the same vein. Yeah, that's a pun. So, tell me what you think. Hit the like button. I'll be back with part 2 of this, and we're going to talk about how the Starks have ice in their veins and what it might mean in terms of who Jon Snow's parentage is. Thank you very much. Talk to you later.